Start for Trice. That's Chase, and what a start for Cincinnati. And he has the football. Saluba. He's got Robinson. He's got a hand. His first touchdown. Gibbs out of the backfield right away. Oh, yeah, there's no question that he was grabbed. They got ridiculous. They got Gibbs one-on-one with Andrew Van Ginkel in space, and that was it.
And this is, again, it's man-to-man. It's one-on-one, and he's underneath. He loses his balance. Block Bowers is one of those guys that has a huge, and this is...
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast presented by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network, live on the Fantasyholics Podcast Network YouTube channel. I am Bo. That is Brant, just as the prop says. Listen, I don't know if I could be any more excited. We got football tomorrow night, and it's the Hall of Fame game, which is usually a bunch of guys that aren't on the 50-whatever-man roster come, week one of the NFL season. It's not going to be the case this year. I mean, Jim Harbaugh has come out and said Hampton's going to play, Trey Harris is going to play. Pretty much every wide receiver not named Ladd McConkey or Quentin Johnston is going to play football on Thursday. And honestly, I may be one of the very few people out here that's intrigued by this, but we get like 3/4 of Trey Lance playing football too, which is still, in my opinion, one of the biggest what ifs in recent NFL memory. So I'm honestly kind of a little bit intrigued. We haven't heard as much on the other side of the ball from the Lions as to who's going to play there. But I am very excited, giddy with anticipation to see some of these guys play tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see a little bit what we saw a couple years ago where the Raiders trotted out their first string running back for like the first drive of the game, and then they pulled him. So we will get to see that a little bit. I think it was Hooker will be starting for the Detroit Lions, which is a guy that both of us were intrigued about coming out of college. He was injured in college and has never really got his opportunity to play. So this is a chance for him to go out and show, and maybe he will be the successor there to Goff in the future. Who knows? But yeah, so it's actually going to be pretty interesting. I think that first quarter is going to be kind of fun. Get to see a lot of guys that could be fantasy relevant come September. So it's definitely going to be a fun time. And like I said, they're going to treat us pretty nicely to kick it off too. Both high-powered offenses, even with the backup quarterbacks. Like you said, Trey Lance has a good arm. He can run. He'll run that RPO. And then you get Hooker, who has an amazing arm. And we know how deep the Lions receiving core is. Now you don't see him on the field as much, but you do know that when one goes down, they normally have a guy that's backing them up that's pretty decent too. So they're a pretty deep receiving core there in Detroit too.
Yeah, honestly, at the end of the day, even bad football is going to be exciting because all of us have been hurt by those Thursday night games in the past, and we all still tuned in to watch. So one never knows what game we're going to get, but we have a game, and that's all that really matters.
That's right.
That being said, Brant, we're kind of wrapping up a series that we started, several weeks back here with a few weeks of in between different things and whatnot. But tying a bow on our ranking show, with a position in my mind that has the biggest discrepancies in fantasy football. This is one of those positions where if you have one of those top 3 guys, 4 or 5 guys, you're really setting yourself against your opponent. And it feels like if you don't have one of those top 5 guys, most seasons top 3 guys, if you don't have one of those, you're kind of like streaming and hoping you hit and land on the right guy that week. It's just one of those positions that the position scarcity and value scarcity is such a massive drop off that, again, if you have one of those top end guys, you're setting yourself up to an instant matchup advantage when your opponent doesn't have that same positivity from that tight end position.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's just jump straight into these tight ends. They do make a difference, and I think that ranking, as you said, the top three. I do think the rankings are starting to close and narrow. I don't think it's that big of a jump anymore in your top 10. But my number 10 is a guy that a few years ago people were talking about as a top 4 tight end, top 5 tight end. Then he got traded away, and I've got Zach Ertz of Washington there as my number 10 tight end. He's finished as tight end 7 last year. He was one of Daniels' favorite targets. You're not sure what's going on with Terry McLaurin. You got Debo, who's just now getting into the offense and learning it. And I think Zach Ertz could easily become or be one of Daniels' favorite go-to targets. You know that's who he's looking for on third down to move the chain. So Zach Ertz, I think, finishes inside the top 10 again, and I have him as my number 10 tight end on the year.
Wow, you are correct, Brent. That is definitely one I did not see coming. Let's see if I can do the same thing to you. We talked about this a little bit pre-show about how number 10 was going to be shocking on both ends. I've actually got Terrence Ferguson of the Los Angeles Rams as my number 10 tight end. I have him as my number 1 rookie tight end for this season. It's more to do with the Sean McVay offense and how I expect his usage to be. And again, this is a guy that I've kind of fallen in love with in the pre-draft process out of the University of Oregon. I think he's got a very transferable skill set from college to the NFL without missing much time. He blocks well, inline blocking he does well, got a decent amount of speed, a knack to find the soft spot in zone defenses. I think Terrence Ferguson finds the field a lot. I think, and does enough to be a top 10 tight end this year, which again, some years that's not a lot. And maybe this year it is, but I like Terrence Ferguson a lot, Brant. And, I'm not willing to print like this yet, but it wouldn't shock me if we come back and talk about this, 6 months from now. And it's like, hey, how did this guy end up as a top 5 tight end? It wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that means, so we both talked about this last week, how we had top 20 receivers. I think you had Adams just outside of your top 20, but you had Puka up there. So you're talking about this is going to be one high-powered offense in LA, and they always have been. And McVay does find ways to get it to the playmakers. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, this could easily be a top 10 tight end in Ferguson. So you went from one Ferguson. I'm going to go to the other Ferguson at number 9. I have Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak looks for him. He likes him. He's one of his favorite targets. I noted they added Pickens, and Pickens has been showing out in camp, but I still think Jake Ferguson is going to be one of Dak's favorite targets, one of the guys he's going to look for. And I think Jake Ferguson finishes inside the top 10. I believe he finished outside of it last year, just outside, but he did miss 3 games. And, Dak was banged up last year as well. So I do think Jake Ferguson finds his way back in. And he's still only 26 years old.
This is why the tight end position is such a big disparity, Brant, because you've said 2 names so far that I have nowhere near mine. I've said one that's not in yours. Let's see if I can go 2 for 2 as well. I have a feeling this one probably is. I think I'm probably a little lower on him than most, but I actually have TJ Hawkinson at my number 9 spot. I think the biggest reason for TJ Hawkinson being there for me is I just have the question marks about the quarterback play in Minnesota. The one thing I will say about JJ McCarthy is, and like we say about every young quarterback, Brant, they love their tight ends. They love those big body guys that get open, close to the line of scrimmage for them. So I think Hawkinson does enough to stay up there. But again, when you've got Jettas and you've got Jordan Addison and Aaron Jones catching, maybe not. But I do think it's just enough, not enough for him to be as high as a lot of people have him, but I have him getting in there for me.
Well, I'm even a little bit lower on him because he's outside of my top 10. I don't believe in JJ McCarthy. I believe in Justin Jefferson, and that's about the only pass catcher I believe in right now until I see something out of McCarthy. Hawkinson's actually outside of my top 10. Okay. At my number 8, and this guy could easily start to move forward as we hear more about some injuries to his backup who took away quite a few snaps. I have Mark Andrews at number 8. I know likely went down. He's having a surgery. Week 1's in doubt. If this is an extending injury, then Mark Andrews is going to could easily return to that top 5 tight end that he has been in the past. Now we know how athletic Isaiah Likely is. And that really the only reason Andrews sneaks in is because how long does it take for Likely to get back up to speed if he does miss week 1 and can't practice until then? So I think Mark Andrews does finish at number 8. If Likely comes back and gets some practice rest before week 1, he's going to slide a little bit for me. But we do know how dominant Mark Andrews can be at that tight end position.
Yeah. The only thing that scares me a little bit there, Brant, is, the emergence of Rashad Bateman finally last year, Zay Flowers, and just how up and down that tight end room was in Baltimore last year. But I'm okay with that. I actually have another old guy at number 8 myself. I have Travis Kelce down at 8, Brant. I think we saw Noah Gray come in and take a lot of targets from Travis last year. We saw Mahomes stop leaning on Travis as much as he had in the past. Now, don't get me wrong. Travis still had a great year. And honestly, I was surprised in some like regular PPR leagues, not tight end premium. He still was a top 5 tight end last year, even with Noah Gray breathing down his neck as much as he has. But, again, if Rashee Rice is on the field, Xavier Worthy's on the field, Noah Gray's on the field, getting these reps, there's just more mouths to feed. And recent Patrick Mahomes likes to spread the ball a little bit. He doesn't just hyper target guys. And so, again, I think what you're going to see with Travis Kelce this year is you're going to see some games where he just explodes. And then I think you're going to have some games this year where Travis goes, 3 receptions for 40 yards and no touchdowns. So, again, the way the tight end landscape has been in the years past, that's enough for me to say that he still gets there, but it's not the Travis Kelce of old.
Okay. I have Kelce a little bit higher than that, so I'll discuss that here in just a moment. So at number 7, I have Evan Ingram moving over there to a Sean Payton offense, getting in there with Bo Nix and leaning on that. Cortland Sutton's really, yes, you have Pat Bryant there still, Cortland Sutton, and then, the running back duo. But I think Evan Ingram's going to explode in that offense. We know that he likes to use the tight end. We've seen Sean Payton have a little fun with gadget guys. And what stops him from using Ingram in that type of role? Not full Taysom Hill type. But yes, but I still think Ingram's going to have a great year, and I think they're going to lean on him a lot.
Yeah, I like Evan Ingram quite a bit more than you do, so I will save Evan Ingram for a little bit later on. I must have somebody visiting. The dogs are going nuts, so we'll try to work through this. At number 7, I actually have Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. Again, I just think there's too many question marks in the wide receiver room. There's a lot of what ifs, a lot of maybes. I know a lot of people are excited about Matthew Golden and his speed, but that doesn't guarantee hands. I think when you get into this offense and the way Green Bay is going to be, Matt LaFleur is going to be with this offense, it's going to be one of those things that if we need a sure-handed catch, it's going to be a lot of Tucker Kraft. So I've got Tucker at number 7.
Yeah, I don't mind Tucker Kraft. I do have him outside of my top 10. I do think that he's going to be a reliable target. And if I know Jordan Love likes to spread the ball out because he's never had a true number 1 there. So he definitely could be very reliable. The consistency is the only thing that scared me away from putting him into inside the top 10, because there could be games that maybe he doesn't see the ball come his way or make any catches. So the consistency is what scares me a little bit there in Green Bay. So you had a rookie in yours. I have a rookie at mine. At number 6, I have Warren of the Indianapolis Colts. I think he's going to be the check down monster for the Indianapolis Colts. Whoever the quarterback is, they're going to want to try to keep their spot on that field. So I think Warren's going to be the beneficiary of that. I think they're going to do a lot of check downs. He's a phenomenal pass catcher. He's a phenomenal blocker. He was ranked as the number 1 tight end in this class by most experts coming out. So I think Warren's going to have a great year. I think he's going to be very consistent across the board. I don't think he's going to have these explosions of 35, 40-point games. I think he's going to be a very consistent guy all year and just finish right there at number 6, around 5 or 6, and just be consistent all the way across the board with 15 to 17 points a game.
Can either Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones hit a check down is the question that bears answering. I have very serious doubts about that. I honestly don't know if Warren would get in my top 15 at this point.
Okay. I got him there. Maybe I'm reading into a little more hype at training camp right now with the way that he has been going. Maybe I'm reading more into it, but I do think that he's going to be the guy.
He may be a great tight end with the coaching staff throwing him the football, but when it's got to be Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, which, hey, listen, I see the hype on Anthony Richardson. Maybe this is a bounce back year for the Indianapolis Colts, but man, that scares me a little bit. I do have a guy you already talked about at number 6 here for me. I have Mark Andrews. Very similar to what you said. I think, Lamar Jackson has really planted that flag as a competent pass thrower, which, for some years, there's some question marks by, some fatter folks, but again, Isaiah Likely may miss some time. And then really down the stretch last season, it was, it started out Isaiah Likely had that huge game early and everybody's like, oh my God. And then Mark Andrews kind of came back a little bit into the picture. But I do think listen, I think Mark Andrews is still the tight end 1 in that offense, even if Isaiah Likely's healthy. But I do think him, having that leg injury, I believe it was an rolled ankle, that could be, a problem for a tight end who's got an inline block, right? Got to use those choppy feet, choppy motions, got to, 10-yard ins, 10-yard outs, a lot of cuts for tight ends. So, maybe they don't rush him back super quick, and then maybe Mark Andrews gets such a big start on that spot that it's too hard for Likely to take that back over.
I agree. So my number 5 is Sam Laporta. So many mouths to feed in that Detroit offense with Williams coming on. Everyone's talking about him at training camp. Amon St. Brown. It's a new offense with Ben Johnson gone. Gibbs, Montgomery. I still think Laporta is going to get just enough love. I think he's going to be that red zone target. His touchdowns are what's going to keep him moving up into the top 5 of tight ends and keeping himself relevant all year long. I do think that offense is staying high-powered. The one thing that does scare me is we saw how good the Detroit defense can be when they were fully healthy at the beginning of the year. If they're healthy all through the year, that offense may not need to pass that much come the second half.
Yeah, I actually have Sam Laporta at 5 as well. And honestly, I think it's for different reasons. In my head, I do think this is an offense where all 3 of those, pass catchers can thrive. I don't think it happens on a week-to-week basis. I think you may see, hey, we may game plan for JMO this week because there's a little bit of a slower secondary with this team we're playing, or, whatever the case may be. But I do think, Sam Laporta will have his games where he's schemed and gets a decent amount of looks. And I think you are spot on, Brand. I think he will be one of the premier red zone threats for this offense. I think he bounces back from his kind of sophomore slump-ish season that he had last year. And I think 5 is a great spot for Sam Laporta.
Absolutely. And we got to give love to the Illinois boy coming out of high school here in Illinois too. At my number 4, I have Travis Kelce. I still think he's going to be Mahomes' go-to guy on third down. I know we saw a little down year last year, but I still think that he is still at the elite level of tight ends. I think I have him at 4 because I really think that right here is where that break is between your top 3 that are going to be, your 20-point getter every week. And then the 4 through 10 is where that break really is. And I think Kelce is on that break now. He's no longer that elite talent, but he can still do it. He can still hang you a 40-point week and put you right above everyone else. And that's the reason I still have him right there.
Okay. I have Evan Ingram at number 4, Brant. Listen, when you talk about, Bo Nix and what Bo Nix did last year, as somebody who flew, and spent some money to fly to Denver to watch their team get abused by Bo Nix, it was very apparent that he has all the tools and the skills to be very, very successful in this league. And what he did last year with a ragtag group of, Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims and Devon Vele and Troy Franklin, and all these other guys that, wouldn't make some JV high school football teams. They made it a priority to go out and get Evan Ingram early. And honestly, if you could dream up a marriage for a guy with Evan Ingram's skill set and the way Evan Ingram plays the game of football, Denver is the perfect spot for a guy like Evan Ingram. I think if I could guarantee Bo Nix does not have a sophomore slump and has a year as good as he had last year, with Evan Ingram in town this year. I think Evan Ingram's tight end 1-2 on the season, Brant. I really do. I just am so nervous that there is a chance for a sophomore slump. But I think that running game in Denver is going to be pretty lackluster still this year. I know we're excited about RJ Harvey. But I still think you're going to have to move the ball through the air a decent amount this year. I think Sean Payton, he's had some of the, arguably one of the better tight ends in NFL history, and Jimmy Graham pacing the sidelines there for him in New Orleans for a lot of his tenure there. I think there's a really, really good chance that Evan Ingram's a focal point of this offense and just absolutely explodes. I do not view him as a drop-off from the top 3. Matter of fact, I had him at 3, and I could not justify over the guy I have at 3, so I had to switch it back.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Okay. At number 3, I have Trey McBride. He exploded last year. He looked phenomenal with Kyler Murray. It was Kyler Murray's favorite target. I still think he will be the favorite target. Yes, I did talk about the bounce back of Harrison Jr., but I still think McBride's still the number 1 target getter in that offense, and I have him at number 3 there. And honestly, he's kind of at 3 because Harrison Jr. is in town, because the 1 and 2 that I have, I don't know if I trust another receiver on their team to take as many targets as Marvin Harrison could. So I do have Trey McBride at number 3.
Yeah, I also have Trey McBride at 3. I think, honestly, the reason I keep Trey McBride at 3 instead of higher is the quarterback play is really what does it for me. I think Kyler has been kind of a disappointment in his NFL career. The number 1 overall pick, Heisman winner. You kind of had higher expectations, but it's just been okay for Kyler. I do think, obviously, we saw how good of a season Trey McBride can have. I also do expect, Marvin Harrison to have a better season this year than he did last year, which obviously plays a part in it. But I think this offense can be better than they were last year as a whole. And if that does happen, then Trey McBride stays right where he's at. I think 3 is a very feasible spot for Trey.
All right. At number 2, I have Brock Bowers. Geno Smith's there. Pete Carroll is there. So it's going to be a run-heavy offense. So I think Genty sees a lot more work than the running backs did in Vegas last year. But I still think Bowers is the number 1 target. I know Jacoby Myers is still in town. I still think that he's going to be the Tyler Lockett-esque player that Pete's so used to. But I still think Brock Bowers is going to have an amazing year. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. I think he's going to be the number 1 guy. So I have Brock Bowers at number 2.
Yeah, honestly, Brant, I think I agree with you in a lot of things you're saying. The biggest knock for me on Bowers is Ashton Genty. The Raiders really didn't have a run game last year. They played from behind almost every single week. Didn't really have a way to establish a run last season and kind of control tempo. So a lot of games they got down early and had to throw a lot in. I still think, obviously, Bowers is a superb talent. Obviously, if this was a dynasty top 10 right now, and rather than just this season's rankings, it's clear Bowers is the number 1 at this point. But I agree. I think, and I am a little more confident in Jack Besh out of TCU, and I'm a massive Dante Thornton fan out of the University of Tennessee, 6'4", 200 plus pounds, 6'5" or 4'5", 40. I could go all day on that guy. But I do think that obviously it's outside of Jacoby Myers, a huge bunch of question marks. And Jacoby's going to be the number 1 target for the wide receiver room, but he's not even going to come close to the amount of targets that Bowers is going to see. I just think you hit the nail on the head. They're going to run a lot this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So at number 1, I have one of your favorite guys. You have tooted this horn for years and years in fantasy. I've got George Kittle. I think this is a huge year for him. Deebo Samuel's gone. Brandon Ayuk is banged up. Jennings is already banged up. Ricky Pearsall is in town and playing, but we don't know what the rest of the receiving room is even going to look like. Come week 1, it may be Pearsall and Kittle lining up on the outside and probably Christian McCaffrey in the slot. And so you have no idea what this receiving room is going to look like. And I think Kittle is going to benefit tremendously from this. And I think it's going to be a huge year for him. I do think he finishes as tight end 1 this year. And I expect a humongous turnaround for him this year.
Yeah, I will say this, Brant. The only thing that slows George Kittle down this year is if George Kittle picks up an injury. Otherwise, it's the sky's the limit. I'm almost willing to plant a flag and say this may be the best tight end season we ever see. The makings are there for that. I know that's a little bullish because we've had some great years out of the tight end room before. But again, like you alluded to, that the rest of that pass catching regime is just, what is going on? It's like a hospital wing at this point. And then honestly, then you talk about the backfield and you got, obviously Christian McCaffrey, if he's healthy, he's one of the biggest game changers in football. When's the last time he was completely healthy? So I do think Kittle gets leaned on. He got that contract, got that extension this year. And obviously we know him and Brock Purdy already have the chemistry. I think that is in full effect starting week 1 and just goes until the wheels fall off. And for everybody in fantasy, myself included, who owns shares of George Kittle, you're hoping that's about week 18 after the fantasy season concludes. But yeah, I think Kittle's, the makings are there for Kittle. So I honestly, Brant, I am surprised with how big the discrepancies were, at 4 through 10 for you and I, and how similar they were with the top 3, which I think really just does go to show, again, what we talked about on the beginning of the show. If you don't have one of those top 3 guys, you're scratching and clawing, hoping to find one of those next guys. And I think we kind of really just nailed it with that sentiment right there.
Absolutely. Tight end's one of those positions that if you're in a lucky enough spot to not reach for the tight end and one of these top 3 falls perfectly to you, then you're in good shape all year, minus the bye week, which then you just scratch and claw. And those are one of those positions that it's a make or break, really. Like if you have this tight end that's hanging 20 points every week, then you have a 7 to 10 point advantage on somebody every single week. And this is a very difficult position to project. We've seen it so many years. 4 through 10 shakes out so differently. Week 1 or from like week 3, you could have 10 people that aren't even in the top 10 by the end of that year. But yeah, I think that does it for our rankings over the last few weeks. And I think that does it for today, unless you got anything else to add.
Just the fact that we got football again tomorrow. That's
football.
All I got.
We do got football. Also, guys, don't forget, tune in Sunday mornings with us on our live start sits when the season starts. We'll be live every Sunday morning, help you with your start sits. We'll talk some football with you when the London games and the Ireland games and all those games are on. We're going to get on. We're going to talk some football, do some sits with you. Make sure you tune in. Join us live. Don't forget
the most important part about all that, Brent. We're also going to talk food.
Yes, we will definitely talk food. Absolutely, we will. That's one of our favorite segments of the show is talking food. And we like to throw in some over-unders or higher lowers in there as well with Underdog. So make sure you guys join us on Sunday mornings when the season kicks off. And that does it for today. So as always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.